do to change, you've got to do the groundwork. People have to have a sense of a problem that needs to be solved. And don't assume because you can see it writ large that everyone else that you're trying to change can also see it. They might have a different perspective, different responsibilities and all the rest. So it's very important, absolutely critical in my view, that you do a suitable amount of preparation. You till the field and you till it and you get it in perfect condition for the change that you're going to sow, right? And again, sounds obvious, but so many people don't want to go through that exercise, don't want to discipline themselves, don't want to take the effort to create a story and a narrative and a proposition that we've got a problem here and perhaps we should do something about it. Even though you know what you want to do, you might introduce that for another month or 6 months for that matter, but you've got to lay the groundwork, or you can find that all the work and the opportunity that you've got may well amount to naught. The third area that I think is really important is to understand your role in the process. Now, Machiavelli said, a prince must have no other object or thought, so this is the leader in politics, must have no other object or thought, nor acquire skill in anything except war, its organisation and its discipline. The art of war is all that is expected of a ruler. Now that's, you again, put it into your own circumstance. For most leaders of most organisations and then leaders within that organisation, if you've got a lot of people that you're looking after, a lot of your job is not to sit there and write code or do something else. Your job is to manage those people and to manage change. Your job is to understand the art of war in a more peaceful context, but it is, right? So it's not sticking your nose into all sorts of things and wasting your time with things that aren't your responsibility. They're going to look to you, the people that are responsible to you and that you're responsible for, look to you to be good at the job that you've been put into. They want to respect that you know the art of war, you know how to negotiate with other departments, you know how to deal and position your proposition with other parts of your department or wherever you are. You know how to play the political process, either internally, externally, or whatever is required for the change that you're going to make. So be very good at what you've been appointed to do, and understand the skills and train yourself. It's why you're here, really. You're trying to acquire and hone the skills that will help you be the leaders that you want to be and will be. And for us in politics, it's to understand that politics is a profession. So many times when I was federal director, I'd get calls and people would say, you've got to get some smart business person in to run the state division. Well, a lot of smart business people around, but they're not skilled in politics. And it's not a management job. It is a management job, but it's a management job in the context of politics. And politics is a profession, and I think a very noble profession, but it's a profession which requires you to get skills and experience, and you'll only be good at that if you accept, I'm in the business of politics and I've got to get more and more and more experience. The same with yourselves, whatever business you are in, to accept it and recognise it and make sure that you're not finding yourself distracted or sticking your nose into things that other people's responsibilities are, but do the things that you should do well. The next area is the importance of your base. And Machiavelli said, if a prince has fortified his own town, then an enemy will be very circumspect in attacking him. Men always dislike enterprises where the snags are evident, and it is obviously not easy to assault a town which has been made into a bastion by a prince who is not hated by the people. And I've found, without exception, both in business and in politics and even with community organisations that I've been involved with, that if you're leading any of those, you've got to be totally conscious of your base and not to do things which contradict the principles of your organisation, the brand of your organisation, the culture of your organisation, the ethics by which your organisation the integrity of your organisation. So if you're going to make change which contradicts what they see and why they support that organisation, whether it's a product that they always buy because the brand is something that they enjoy and admire and want, this particular excellence might be associated with a brand, or excitement, or whatever it is, whatever characteristics, you've got to identify what they are. What is the essence of your organisation? And then don't do things that contradict it, because you're contradicting all the people who support that organisation. You might be part of, one branch of a big department. That branch will still have a culture. It'll have a context in that organisation. You've got to reinforce the strength of that context and don't contradict it. Doesn't mean you don't make change, but it's got to be consistent with what that branch or that organisation or that whatever stands for, because if you contradict those essential elements of that organisation, you're fighting uphill, you lose your base. And in politics, there's 4 million people always vote for the Conservative side, there's 4 million people always vote for Labor, and there's about 4 million people in the middle. Now, if you're trying to make change and influence those 4 million people in the middle, people used to say to me, what smart new American campaign technique have you imported to influence the swing voters? And I'd say third-party endorsement. It's been around for centuries, and it is all about having your base confident about what you're doing, informed about what you're doing, enthusiastic about what you're doing. They'll have far more influence if they say to one of the swing voters who's their friend or colleague or whatever, if they say, so-and-so is doing a good job, they know what they're sensible, they're whatever. If they support a policy, if they're looking confident even when they're under attack, their party's under attack, it influences people who are in the middle and doubtful. It's the same thing with your organisation. You've got to have your base enthusiastic about what you're doing, and if they are, invariably they will influence a lot of other people, quite unbeknownst to you. But it'll be an important part of easing through change, because you've got so many people respecting and supporting, and certainly your base, because others will say, well, if Charlie thinks they're doing a good job, they must be. I trust Charlie. I don't know the organisation, but I trust Charlie. So the base is a critical thing. The next one, disunity. Disunity is death. It's death in politics, but also, again, in organisations that I've been in where the people at one another's throats and there's no support structure. Machiavelli said, I do not believe that any good at all comes from dissension. On the contrary, on the approach of the enemy, cities which are so divided inevitably succumb at once. The weaker faction will always go over to the invader, and the other will not be able to hold out. Very perceptive observation 500 years ago, true as it was then as it is now, and that issue is having a lot of influence. It's probably got us back in the race in many respects in this current context, federal election context. The next one that always interests me is how you approach different types of change. Machiavelli said, injuries must be inflicted once for all. People will then forget what it tastes like and so be less resentful. But benefits must be conferred gradually, and in that way they will taste better. In other words, if you're making change which is going to be difficult, it's going to inflict, pain and distress and all the rest, but if it is essential, you've got to do it. That's what you're charged with. That's what you've got responsibilities, to maintain the long-term strength of the organisation. And it might even mean that people who've done a great job for you no longer are relevant to, your organisation going forward. You've got to look after them with integrity and compassion, but you might have to do things. But if you're going to do things which are difficult and disruptive and disturbing, do it quickly. Get it over and done with. Get the pain in one hit, plan for it. I ran an organisation at one stage where the market collapsed and I had to move on 30% of the staff. And we spent weeks planning for it and looking for packages so that they could go and find other employment and get advice and counselling and all the rest. And I thought it would badly influence the 70 that were staying, that they'd be deeply distressed because their colleagues... But we did what we had to do, and we never got one complaint from one of the 30%, and many of them came back to have drinks with us and all the rest. But the other 70%, I got them all in the room, explained the circumstance, explained what the parent company was doing in the US, the nature of the market, put all the facts and figures, the balance sheets in front of them, and show that if we didn't trim our sails at this stage, we would, none of us would have a job. And ironically, all the worry that I'd had about how the rest of the, esprit de corps and morale would be, it was quite the contrary. They all felt that they'd been included in this process, that they shared the responsibility, and if anything, the whole culture and mood of the place was enhanced by that difficulty. But it was necessary to do it quickly and deal with it, and it made a big difference. The other one is to live consistently by your principles. Machiavelli said, above all, a prince must live with his subjects in such a way that no development, either favourable or adverse, makes him vary his conduct. For when adversity brings the need for it, there is no time to inflict harm, and the favours he may confer are profitless, because they are seen as being forced, and so they earn no thanks. Again, a very obvious thing. I think the principle out of that is have your set of principles, your griding, your tram tracks, the things that you must stay consistent with. Even if people disagree with it, they respect and respond to consistency. And you can run an organisation with people with all sorts of different views about what the priorities are and all the rest. But if you are consistent, they will stick with you in good times and bad and help you achieve your objectives, albeit trying to perhaps influence your way of thinking on things, and that's a good thing. But it's, to me, another critical factor in trying to make sure that you bring about change effectively.